Thank you for joining us today. My name is Samira Tilley, Industry Marketing Manager at Assemble Systems, an Autodesk company. In today's webinar, we will look at how Radius Group is enhancing delivery of warehouse projects by utilizing BIM tools, including Assemble Systems. Now let's get started. It is my pleasure to introduce you to Tim Kelly, Senior Product Manager at Assemble. Go ahead, Tim.
Thank you, Samira. Appreciate the intro. So to go ahead and dive in, I'm going to just quickly run through a agenda so you guys know what's happening today, and then we'll get into the content. So first off, we'll do some quick introductions of our speaker today, and then we'll dive through some company introductions and just get a little background on what Assemble is and who Radius is. And then we'll dive a little deeper into Radius Group, what they offer, what they do, what Radius InSite is, and then walk through a particular case study where we're talking about adding transparency to the project management cycle, as well as general project controls. So we're going to let Nick take us through a case study there. And then we'll wrap up with a Q&A session, let you guys dive in and ask questions about whether it be specifically Assemble's use case on this project, or more generally what's going on and what they're doing this for and what sort of results they see. So with that said, just a little more about myself. As Samir mentioned, I'm a Senior Product Manager with Autodesk. I've been a part of Assemble for quite a while now, but part of my background is in commercial construction. So degree from Texas A&M for all you Aggies out there within construction science. And then I started in the industry in pre-construction, and spent a bit of time in the field as well, all really focused on VDC efforts and BIM, with kind of bits and pieces and estimating and other things and project management. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and introduce and transition over to our guest speaker today, Nick Simmons. Nick, why don't you introduce yourself?
Great. Thanks, Tim and Samira. And also thank you for allowing me to sort of have this opportunity to discuss sort of what we're doing at Radius in a little bit more detail. Just a brief background about myself. After graduating university 7 years ago, I joined a niche real estate firm in London to do some project management, where we're mainly doing office fit-out projects, sort of price ranging from £300,000 up to about 4 million. And then just over 3 years ago, I joined Radius, where I now hold the role of project director, coordinating and managing sort of between our internal departments and clients. So as you can tell from my accent, I'm not Russian. I'm in fact British, live in the UK, and typically spend between 1 to 2 weeks a month in Moscow. And then sort of during the past 3 years, I've been working with sort of my colleagues at Radius to bring to life our Radius InSite dream, which is all about bringing transparency to sort of real estate development.
That's awesome. Thanks for the background there. So before we dive into Radius and the use case there with Assemble, we'll talk a little bit about Assemble for those that are unfamiliar or new to Assemble. Assemble is a cloud-based platform that focuses on 3D model data coming in and the ability to group, sort, and filter and organize that content to make it useful and applicable to a lot of project decisions, from estimating into scheduling into value engineering, project management, etc. And with that said, we have a primary focus on quantities and their value throughout the project, and ultimately the driver that quantities force. So as you condition the information and organize it, you can actually aggregate through Assemble a lot of this data and the quantities that represent the scope that's there. So our key focus from the very beginning was around organizing this content, the digital and virtual content, and making it accessible and useful across the project team. So one of our focuses for quite a while now is having the ability to, from a VDC team perspective, or someone like Nick that has the expertise and the background in organizing and understanding the model content, being able to basically broadcast that out to the rest of their project team and allow others to dive into this valuable information and leverage it for a lot of decisions that they make throughout the project. So with that said, Nick, why don't you go ahead and take us through kind of the introductory of Radius and what you guys are doing.
Great. Thanks, Tim. Radius was sort of founded 12 years ago now, and we sort of pride ourselves on our three core values of integrity, can-do, where we see challenges as opportunities, where we try not to say no to our client, but to find a solution that suits both parties, and finally partnership, helping to make our customers' businesses work better. Our mission is to design, build, finance and operate the finest warehouses and manufacturing real estate in Russia, whilst taking a Western approach to development and client relationships. So just a quick overview of sort of the development we've done and a bit more background on the company. To date, we've developed 3 logistics parks in Kazan, Kiev, and then we have our flagship logistic park, which is Southgate, where we continue to develop, and proud and happy to announce we've just kicked off the design of 42,000 square meters of speculative space. This is our first speculative design and build since the 2014 crisis. So it's showing that stability has come back to Russia, or we at least think so. In terms of sustainability, we see ourselves as sort of the leader of industrial in Russia, the founding fathers of BREEAM, you can almost say, having the first BREEAM rated warehouse, and all our warehouses are BREEAM rated. And additionally, we're the only Russian company to be audited by GRESB, which stands for Global Real Estate Sustainability Benchmarking. We're financially strong, raising over 600 million in equity and debt project financing. And we have sort of 4 core areas of focus for the business. That's ready-to-lease warehousing space, the build-to-suit, Radius InSite Owner's Rep Service, which we're going to dive into in more detail shortly, and property management. Clients or tenants that we have a list of both international and domestic. We've got clients such as Leroy Merlin, Auchan, Decathlon, General Motors, Russian pharmaceutical company 366, and John Deere. Currently, we've got 65 team members, our 2 founders being from Houston and London, and we have team members all across the world in US, England, Russia, and so on. And I think that's where our connection first started with Assemble, with the Houston connection. We sort of spent many hours in their office and even working with S&P sort of to further progress our Radius InSite platform.
Absolutely, that's right. I remember back you guys had easy access to our office, so there were a number of times folks would just stop by from the Radius team, come visit us at Assemble, which is always a blast. And as he mentioned, S&P, that's Satterfield and Ponticus, that's a general contractor based out of Houston as well. And they're also a large user of Assemble.
Great, thanks, Tim. And just a little bit more on sort of the Southgate area. It's in the south of Moscow, prime location, sort of 30 kilometers from the MCAD. If this was a British audience, I could describe the MCAD as sort of the M25. So, Tim, I'm not sure what the main highway is in Houston. And it's sort of a guaranteed 20 minutes from Domodedovo Airport, which is one of the main airports in Moscow. And sort of traffic in Moscow is sort of, I think we're talking before the webinar started, just like Houston, unpredictable. So being that close to the airport really is a huge advantage to all tenants. Okay, to dive into more about Radius InSite now. Radius InSite was first and foremost developed to bring transparency to the real estate market, specifically in Russia. Our aim is to provide transparency between not only ourselves and our clients, but between the main designers, general contractors, and us. We truly believe it revolutionizes traditional design and construction with real-time project knowledge, allowing us to ensure delivery of real estate assets to exact specification, budget, and time, whilst managing all real estate risks such as FX, development, construction. However, we cannot control political risk. I guess that's just like you guys in America currently.
Yeah, I mean, it's an evolution. It's depending on what part of the market you are. Things in construction can be a black box, and project builders, owners today really do crave transparent process and have more insight, more of that up front to see what's going to happen, to see how you're managing it, and ultimately give them a comfort level that you're sharing with them the details that you're leveraging, you're using during that development stage. So why don't you talk a little bit more about that from a perspective of seeing, you've mentioned to me in the past where there's just this like light bulb that goes off when you start sharing this sort of information. Is there any kind of case where you could see yourself sitting with your tenants, your clients, and you start sharing this information, how different from the traditional or status quo this is?
Yeah, no, 100%. I think the big light bulb moment for us with the sort of Auchan project case study that we're going to come on to is when sort of there's a new construction director joined Auchan, and he had 60 different projects on the go, with our project sort of being the highest in value. In fact, the value probably equaled the other 59. And he sort of saw from the transparent reporting, he's like, that's it, these guys at Radius have got it under control. This can go to the bottom of my issue pile. So that was the real light bulb moment for us, and thought, okay, we're definitely onto something here.
Yeah, I can tell you I know exactly what you're talking about. There's that sense of comfort where they can kind of just take a sigh of relief and say, okay, I understand these guys they're obviously professionals, and they're going to share with me when things pop up, and they need my input and give me the ability to weigh in on informed process. So it's really, really great to see this and see where you guys are taking it.
Thanks. And just to sort of finish sort of showing what InSite is, it's a 5D based platform based around the transparent reporting. And the purpose is that any high-level executive can know where their project is by reading this 10 to 15 page report. And this report is issued weekly, bi-monthly, or monthly, depending on the client's needs and wants. We believe that BIM is enabling us to reach client expectations of delivering on time, budget, quality, given this integrated 5D model. It's giving us better risk management and allowing us to analyze the design in further detail, which only benefits sort of the end product for the client. For us, this diagram sort of sums up what we're trying to deliver at Radius. We see us as the transparent glue between all project parties. We find that typically you'd have sort of a project manager who reports to the client directly. However, they're not managing the designer, the contractor, or in some case the client or the project. From our experience, it's not only the general designer who needs to be closely managed, it's also the client. Because whilst the designer is the one spending the money, it's the client that always comes in with those last minute requests that sort of takes your budget from $45 million to 46. You just can't afford the extra million. Sort of using Revit and Assemble and other tools, it no longer takes us weeks to write clients with potential cost variations. We can do it in a matter of days or weeks. And so with the one integrated team approach, we see the main contractor, the designer, as just extensions of us. We're closely managing them throughout the whole project to deliver on time, and really making sure the specification is as per the signed up specification. I think it's not only Russia, but sort of worldwide in construction, that the fixed budget is only a fixed budget until the contractor runs out of money. So we're managing the contractor, the cash flows, sort of the valuations, and so on, to ensure sort of project success.
Yeah, that's great. And in the U.S., I know, I don't know how broadly here, but there's a transition happening where you see contract structure favor this integrated team approach, where more and more contracts issued are less about having a separation between the designer, and the designer being more the owner's representative, and then the contractor being someone separate that's just going to build your project, and really having a direct interaction between all parties, and having this flow of information that can be shared in any direction here, and that integration across your team. That's great to hear that you're seeing it, and that this is really a global transition that's happening, that you guys are helping drive here.
No, definitely. And I think for the first time as well during the project, we had this sort of cloud-based platform that all files are uploaded to. We're now going to share sort of a video of the Auchan project, which we're going to use as a case study for the presentation. Just to give you a brief background on Auchan, they're an international French retailer. They're sort of similar to like Walmart in the US or Tesco in the UK. They have stores in 17 countries worldwide. They're the 13th largest food retailer in the world, with a 51.7 billion euro consolidated revenue for 2018, excluding taxes. They have a staggering sort of 351,000 employees worldwide, and their investment portfolio is currently valued at over 1.35 billion euro. Moving on to the project you can see now, the total project budget was 6 billion rubles. I assume now you're probably Googling ruble to dollar. So as of today, the ruble is sort of 65.6 rubles to the dollar. However, during the project, it was sort of close to 60, which means sort of the total project budget was anywhere in between $92 million and $100 million. Project, to our knowledge, is the biggest building of its type in Russia and Europe. However, I should say at this point I'm happy to be corrected. The total land size is 45 hectares, which, if I'm correct, is 85 American football fields.
Yeah, that's massive, and I apologize. I was gonna pause it here, and I struggled to do so in time. But I'm looking at how much dirt has been brought into this site. Do you have a stat on how much material was hauled in? Because this is not only is that a huge site, but that is a lot of soil that you guys had to bring in for this.
I don't have a stat on the sort of cubic meters of soil, but I know it was sort of well over 16,000 trucks.
That's incredible.
In fact, I've just been reliably informed by a colleague that it was 1 million cubic meters of soil movement.
That's incredible.
Yeah, so originally that was a forest till we started. So in total we built, the warehouse you can see is 109,000 square meters, which is 20.3 football fields. And we're hoping, hopefully by the end of the year, we'll start designing phase 2, which is sort of just in front, north of the view you can see now. And that's going to be about 40,000 square meters of chilled space. To get to where we were today, it was over 100 design iterations before we signed the contract. So it was sort of no easy feat getting this contract off the ground.
That's fantastic. So before I jump off of this video, I just want to like to weigh in and say I like when units in cubic meters and square meters metric weights are often transitioned into to tell people how many either elephants it weighs or football fields big. Always a great unit of measure conversion there.
This was the first time we've reported to the client using our sort of 5D BIM platform. We did it on a previous project. However, the client was our internal executive management team. So this was where we took the risk. We said to the client, we're ready to deliver. BIM was used during all stages, so from concept design all the way to the as-built model, which was delivered at the end of 2018 to the client. In total, we were sort of 1.5 months ahead of schedule. There was transparent reporting throughout, the client receiving weekly project updates. 3D design allowing the client to make design decisions, so there's no surprises. I think a great example of just the simple power of a 3D design video is sort of in the office block. So the client agreed, it's been signed off probably 20 times by executives. However, they get our 3D design video, they sort of share it to the senior management team, and sort of the CFO is asking, where's the glazing in the offices? So caught just at the right time. So I think that's just a simple example of the power of sort of 3D design video. And then finally, you could say most importantly, Radius InSite tracking helped to deliver this project on time. The project budget was set back in 2015, at which point the ruble's gone up and down numerous times. However, we still delivered to the fixed price project budget we set then. So we were at financial risk on this project. So any ruble over comes out of our pocket. So sort of different technology we used. There was sort of several 3D project concepts which were integrated using 3D geoscanning on the territory to determine the optimal plan, the optimum location of the warehouse. There was sort of the standard clash control. We had 250 individual clashes, however, several thousand of systematic clashes. I think we sort of retaught our general designer how to look, review and do clash control. There's more than 15 detailed reports handed to the client throughout. We also used a piece of software called Revisto for our design commenting. For us, this certainly saved weeks, if not months, of design, because you've got real-time design commenting from ourselves, from the client's external consultant. It gives us the ability to check who's actually reviewed the design iterations, the drawings. And then once the general designer's updated or fixed the issue, they can then send us a notification and we can check them. So in all, the process of design was sort of greatly sped up using Revisto.
That's awesome, and having that real-time feedback can be so valuable when you're kind of in that, you're not waiting multiple weeks to get a response and then sending a response back and then not knowing if they've seen your response or have commented on it. So having that real-time collaboration is critical in a process like you mentioned when you guys are at risk of any overdraws on the end of the project.
Yeah, so we were at risk of time and budget. So sort of the odds were stacked against us, and I'm sort of glad to say we were sort of on budget and early. So this is sort of design variance, value trending, and budget tracking. Using the assemble show changes functions, you can track the design progress from first concept design to the last working model. On average, we agreed with the general designer that I'd issue a revised set of models every 2 weeks. In hindsight, maybe that was a little bit too frequent, but I think you learn as you progress in the BIM journey. Using the data which was exported from saved views in Assemble, it was a quick and efficient way for us to really see the sort of changes in key package design with model revisions. And it's also another tool to check the designer is working as they say. As I'm sure as most people in the webinar do, at the start of any project, you've got your budget, you've got your sort of quantities. So on the, I believe it's the red sort of dashed line you can see is sort of the budgeted amount. So for example, interior drywall partitions, we had a budget amount of 42,000 square meters. That budget isn't just taken sort of out the sky. We've got sort of from working on this project for 7 years, we've got pages of budgets, revisions. So we've got sort of an experienced team, well qualified, great track record. So they're coming up with these budgets. So the budget's set. We know from building 600,000 plus square meters, if we're over that budget, either we've made an error, which would hold our hands up if we have, or it's the general designer. So as you can see sort of through the progression, sort of up and down, and eventually I think we were just, in this graphic we were just over, but then we came back down. So we really are tracking each package from the start of the project to really watch the budget and control the budget.
That's great, and what I like about this is that, as you mentioned, the frequency is just up for whatever the team feels is appropriate. But I love whenever you can have a conversation about a change from this point to this point, and often you only get incremental updates that are status checks or packages issued for budget updates. But in this case, you can have as I mentioned before, that continuous collaboration, that conversation about, oh, well, we did X that drove this change, and ultimately we haven't had a decision yet. So once we get a decision, we know where it's going to go. Or again, just keeping that dialogue going and having different eyes, different kinds of eyes looking at this information in aggregate in a lot of different ways. So it's not just analyzing the 2D documents that are going to have the scope definition at the end of building that package, but ultimately you're going to see how that impacts the budget as you make those updates very frequently.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think as from the diagram where you had radius in the middle, sort of there's no blame game. It's all about the dialogue, sort of learning sort of what ideas that general designers use to get to that part of the design. We firmly believe that you're always learning, you're always developing design ideas. Continued dialogue to see maybe sort of this set designer's got sort of an innovative idea to bring the drywall partitions down, and maybe sort of that drop between sort of 20th of October and November was sort of due to this design or it was an error, and as we've seen it was more likely they were playing around with the model.
Yeah, and you can see they probably changed some walls out from drywall to CMU. You've got a spike there, and then changes happen. So So absolutely, you can see kind of how different things impact one another. And then obviously at the same time, you've got the ability to have the plans up next to this, or the model as a visual, or the showing changes model within Assemble. So a lot of different lenses to look at this data and provide really informed decision making as you go through this.
Yeah, it's sort of decision making and sort of showing the client the transparent reporting. We got no secrets, nowhere to hide.
Sure.
We want the client to be sort of sat on our side of the table. Okay, so I think as always with all projects, there is some element of value engineering that's got to be done. So in this example, it was the checkpoint. And I think Assemble, for us, speeds up value engineering sort of by no end. During the project, we realized that the checkpoint, which sort of the budget was, I think, approximately around where we got to in the end, which was the 1.9 million rubles, the checkpoint cost was coming in at sort of 2.2, just over. So we sort of, at this point, we sat down with the general design of the client and sort of working up some value engineering opportunities to see what can be done. So the general designer provided us with a variety of different models for which, because sort of our Assemble is cost loaded with the assembly codes, sort of value engineering cost of those options was done pretty immediately. And then we sort of went through the changes. We sort of declined some, the client declined a few others, and we sort of came to an end and agreed on sort of design changes. So the key value engineering options which were implemented were the exclusion of the concrete slab under the asphalt coating, exclusion of the concrete ramp with the safety barriers for disabled access. This access was performed by earth leveling and asphalt sloping. And then at this point, between the P stage and the working drawings, we realized that the roof stormwater drainage system was missed from the P stage model. So that was actually an addition. But I think sort of with Assemble and the way it allows us to export the data and visualize it, it sort of makes that whole value engineering process quicker and sort of more understandable. And if you're showing the client sort of visuals or what it's going to be, the cost variation, sort of decisions were made during a project meeting. They weren't sort of, we didn't send ideas with a sort of rough paper budget for them to then sort of go back, consider, take weeks, months maybe. All decisions were done pretty much there and then.
And ultimately, when you have the gap in time of, I looked at this, provided some response, it went to the design team, they made their update, and I've got a new version. To think back possibly a month or maybe more, maybe let's say it's 6 weeks, the last time you really looked at those same details, you've forgotten half of what you took down as your kind of mental notes as you go through that process. So that happening, that again, just this points to that collaboration, that real-time feedback, that information about, as we step through this, we're talking about it, we're all on the same page at any given point in time, and that visual adds so much depth to the information that you have. It's not just about like, here's the 3D geometry of what's going to be in place, but it really helps the team track together what's going on and what changes are occurring, and ultimately what decisions are being made.
Yeah, and quite often our clients aren't construction guys or engineers. Normally it tends to be like logistics guys. So this isn't their background. They haven't studied it. It just happens to fall on their plate, that logistics, it's going to be their warehouse. All right, this is your project. So we really are about simplifying the whole process from start to finish, enabling sort of, and teaching clients throughout, but really enabling them to make informed decisions without thinking, are these guys trying to play us here or what? Okay, here is sort of showing the checkpoint data sort of in a different way. Here we've used assembly codes to show the difference in volumes. So we started P stage with concrete volumes, you could say 100%. Through the value engineering, we managed to reduce that down to 40%. For us, this is just sort of showing another way to show more information, analyze, and show more data.
Yeah, this really does give, again, a different lens. You're making a translation happen. So you're taking in scope information as provided by the design team, as provided in that process of actually generating the model, the drawings, and you're saying let's translate this into the dollars and cents, or in your case, not dollars and cents, but rubles. So with this, so you're speaking to a different consumer. So that person that is managing your budget here may, like you said, if you're talking to, from the owner's perspective, someone on their financial review group or a part of their team that understands the financial aspect of it, but doesn't necessarily care about what's making that up in terms of concrete or asphalt. This is, again, that translation pipeline that you can have within your 10 or 12 page report, a lot of different looks for different consumers, for different entities within that cohesive team that can then provide their feedback or weigh in, and things that make sense from their perspective. So that's what I like about having all of these different lenses, is that you're catering to a broader audience. You're showing to a broader spectrum of people, kind of all real time, because this is all tied back to that same model-based information.
Okay, so here we have the work in place, monitoring and reporting. This was something that was come up from working with Satford and Ponticus. So we sort of really, for Auchan, we revolutionized how we report to our clients sort of in the weekly construction meetings. We sort of realized that we have our construction director, who no doubt would love to sort of stand at the front, show some pictures from his mobile phone of sort of construction progress, and talk for hours. No one's really going to understand it. So what we've done, sort of using Assemble, using the model, we've really revolutionized. And to be fair, it's shortened our construction meetings for sure, and no doubt it gave sort of the client a feeling that, yeah, they're on track, or okay, they need to sort of pull their finger out on this area over the next couple of weeks and speed things up. So on here, for example, you've got sort of 3D image of the office block. On floors 1 to 3, you've got the offices, the meeting rooms, the canteen, and then the 4th floor is where the mechanical plant is. You've got the blue, which shows the completed areas, the green that's in progress, and then the grey, which is to be completed. And we sort of found this visual, which will go through the meetings or the report. It really does help to show exactly where you are. We won't just show the offices, we'd show sort of every block or every smaller section, depending on what was going on. And for us, we loved it. Our senior management loved it, because they want to know where this project for a risk is, and this is how we're going to report going forward. So
this visual is great, and I think you were just going to transition to the next slide, but keep in mind that you can have this visual up alongside what's going on with the schedule and how you're progressing against that with that particular visual. So sorry, go ahead and continue. I just wanted to make that correlation that these two things are part of that same review. So sorry, Nick, go ahead.
No worries. Thanks for that, Tim. So yeah, no, so exactly. So you've got the two visuals side by side. On this, you've got the sort of the baseline early finish, which is the blue line. You've got the late finish, which is the red, and you've got the actual work in progress. And here we've actually got the main office interior positions. This is to show sort of our transparent reporting. This sort of certain package was, throughout the project, was always behind schedule. I think we sort of think it was a mixture from the general contractor prioritizing to finish the actual warehouse, and then maybe partially a little bit not realizing just how big the main office block was. In total, roughly 7,500 square meters, which is sort of a lot of officing. So don't get me wrong, we reported honestly to the client, showed sort of we're behind, however, sort of explained to them the action plan to ensure that we're still finished on time. And then these work in place reports, sort of it's not really a manual process anymore. Sort of you've got the template saved views, which are coming up according to the work schedule in Assemble. We then give the general contractor access. They confirm sort of execution of the works have been completed, or they unmark the work if that sort of set of works hasn't been finished, and they save that. We then, of course, because as you all know, you can't always 100% trust the general contractor, we'd send sort of a couple of our guys to site, they'll check it, and then that would be the base to create the reports. And then sort of finally where we're at today, from looking at Navis versus Assemble. Don't get me wrong, Navis has sort of some great aspects, but then with Assemble, sort of it's displaying you more properties, and the more properties you have, it's all different analytical graphs. You can do tables, reports, and so on. So up until now, we've only really used Assemble with Excel, but for this new build, our aim is to work with Assemble to really sort of use Power BI to see where we can take sort of our design, construction, reporting, and hopefully sort of we want to simplify it. We want to be creating reports in sort of half an hour to an hour, not having to spend longer on it. And we think sort of the Power BI dashboard, that's where we're going. So I think I'd just like to sort of summarize where we at Radius are. We believe Radius InSite is about delivering real-time information to clients in simple, understandable, transparent reports. Got to manage the risk in the high-risk industry and country that we work in. And we believe that we're implementing processes and systems in Russia that would certainly help and be useful in sort of the US, Canada, and Europe. That is all for now, Tim.
Oh, that's fantastic, and I think you hit the nail on the head with adding, adding this content, adding the information that you're providing is about risk management, and you guys are doing work in an environment that not many firms are out there like Radius doing this sort of work and looking to make a transition for a particular industry the way you guys are. So you're really where the rubber meets the road, or boots on the ground, and in the case of saying we're going to kind of buy into this process and really foster the work we're doing with this collaboration, with this content sharing and information that you're putting together for your project teams. So it's really interesting to hear this and insightful to see where you guys are taking it. So with that said, just kind of take a second to say thank you for putting the content together to share with everyone online today, with the Assemble team. And we really appreciate you contributing and sharing your story and what you guys are up to.
Thanks, guys, for giving us the opportunity to discuss Radius InSite and sort of the Auchan case study with you guys. And also, if any of the sort of listeners out there want to talk more about how we're developing and sort of the Radius InSite way of thinking, I'm always open for a discussion.